Replace Jordan McFadden with Mr. John Birks Gillespie, known to the world as Dizzy.
Affectionately known to the world.
Affectionately known to the world as Dizzy Gillespie. He's a native of Sherrill, South Carolina, born October 21st, 1970.
19.
Mr. Gillespie, what is your earliest recollection?
The first day I went to school, that's pretty far back, huh?
Mm-hmm.
Well, there was a lady next door that lived with us named Mrs. Harrington, Amanda Harrington, who had diabetes. Mm-hmm. And she had this thing, something, a pimple on her foot. Mm-hmm. And she picked this pimple and that to turn into gangrene. Mm-hmm. And she had to have her leg cut off. And they didn't give her any anesthesia. Mm-hmm. She sat there and gritted her teeth. Well, what a woman. Gritted her teeth, and they cut her leg. So Miss Manor was a former school teacher. I was the youngest of 9, so I was the man around the house, those 2 houses, my house and the house next door. So I spent a lot of time over to Miss Mander's house. Miss Mander taught me the alphabet and counting, and I could read before I went to school. So when I got into school, in the primer, I knew all of that, what they was talking about. So I was restless, and I was whistling in the classroom. And the first day I went to school, I got a whooping.
By your teacher?
Yeah.
Do you remember her name?
Miss Strader Miller. Yes, that's all in the book. In my book. And my father was furious because he thought that was his, the whoop, because he whooped us every Sunday, my brother and me, whooped both of us every Sunday. We got a beating anyway. But he got mad, and that lady never whooped me no more. I didn't stay in her grade long enough for her to whoop me no more anyway, because I passed out of there so fast. Out of the primer grade, I was in the first, and I was in the second. I caught up to my brother the first year.
What was your father's name?
James Penfield Gillespie. Call him JP.
Why did your father whip you and your brother every Sunday?
For what we did all the week, that's what he said. That was dirty, though. That really messed up my life. Because, you see, when you know, when a child knows he's going to get it, he's going to do something to warrant getting his self. So I did everything, but I must have been pretty precocious.
Do you remember some pleasant things about your father?
No. I remember, well, the only pleasant thing I can remember about my father was stop whooping me. Let's see. The pleasant thing about my father, sometimes on a Saturday, he'd come in the house with candy in one of his pockets, and we'd have to find the pocket. You know, I'd be all up on him, looking, reaching down in this pocket, and so finally, I got it. You know, one of them little jawbreakers. That's the only thing that he remember. Because every time he's man, my father was austere.
What was your father's livelihood?
Brick mason and musician. But he didn't make a living as a musician. He made a living as a brick mason. Good brick mason too. He built our house. I know some of the other brick masons home that used to work with my father. He had some good from Mr. Burton Allwood. But my father used to go up north and work a lot. He worked in Newark, New Jersey quite a bit. And then I was named for a guy in Newark, some contractor. John, that guy's name must have been John Birks Scarlett. was his last name. And Papa told him, say, well, the next one, I'm a name for you. So every time he come home, my mother would get pregnant. So it was only like 2 years of, all of us were about 2 years apart.
What was your mother's name?
Lottie. Charlotte. I told my brothers and them that they said, man, her name was Lottie. But they don't, I remember something that they told me that my mother's name was Charlotte Herbertine Poe. None of my brothers and sisters don't know nothing about that name. But there must be some logic to it because Lottie is Charlotte. Where did I know? I didn't even know Charlotte was Lottie. So I must have heard that someplace, that her name was that or something.
What do you remember about your mother?
My mother was pretty lenient with me. She whooped me a lot, but she's pretty lenient. She what do I remember most about her? I don't know. Just ordinary, what mothers do.
Okay. What was it like being the youngest of 9 children?
Yeah. My sister used to pinch me all the time and maul my head and push me out of the window.
You said that your father...
She was mean.
Your sister was?
Yeah, I told her. Our sister's mad with me because I told her the book and she was mean to me. She never said a pleasant word.
Which
like
sister was that?
Junior. But she was always nice to the other kid. All of my first cousins and all the neighborhood kids loved her. They loved Junior. But I didn't. I said, wait, I get big enough. You.
Mr. Gillespie, you mentioned that your father was a brick mason and also a musician. Was it from your father that you acquired your interest in music?
No. I was 9 when he died. I fooled around the piano a bit or something like that. But he didn't know it. Boy, he would have been very happy to know that I was a musician because he loved music. I know he must have loved music because our whole house, all of his extra money was spent in musical instruments. There was, I remember seeing a mandolin, clarinet, drums, bass violin, piano. All those instruments around the house.
Did your father play them?
Yeah, he must have played them because they were there in the house. And the older people home say he was quite gifted. He used to play around home there, for little dances. So.
How did you acquire your interest in music?
God gave me. So, it's the only explanation for it.
You started first playing a trombone. Would you like to talk a little bit about that?
I couldn't reach the 5th position. I was too little. But the guy next door, the reason I played the trumpet was the guy next door got one, Miss Amanda Harrington's son. And he got this trumpet, this long trumpet. And I heard him play it. I said, boy, and he let me practice on it. He let me play it. He said, let me try it. Let me try it. He said, boy. And then he would let me practice on his own all the time. So I started playing that.
You have developed a very unique sound. Can you talk about how it was developed and what exactly do you call it? I hear people call your music bebop, they call it jazz, they call it Afro-Cuban. How do you identify your music?
I should have known to identify it. Duke Ellington told me one time, he said, Birks, call me by my middle name. He He said, you know, it was a mistake for you to let them call your music bebop. You should have just let them say it's Gillespiana. I thought about that later on. I said, yeah, because it dates. When you name something, it dates it from that moment. But see, the reason Duke Ellington was never dated, because it was Ellingtonia. His music is...
Mr. Gillespie, if you could identify musicians who have made an impact on the music world, whom would you mention and why?
Well, there have been, I would name musicians who established a style, and then everybody came behind and started playing that style, such as Louis Armstrong, King Oliver, Roy Eldridge, Miles, Clifford Brown, Coleman Hawkins, Lester Young, Johnny Hodges, Charlie Christian, Jimmy Blanton, Al Garner, definitely, of course, Charlie Parker, Coltrane. It's a line, you know, it's a line that goes down. You know, in the saxophone players, the line goes like Sidney Bechet, and then Johnny Hodges, and then Benny Carter, the two of them along the same line. And then Earl Bostic was a stylist, Charlie Parker. And the trumpets, the trombone, the piano, Earl Hines, Billy Kyle, Bud Powell, and the trombone, J.J. Johnson, drummers, Kenny Clark, Max Roach, Art Blakey. So, but you notice, most of the establishers of a cause, of a style in our music have been black. The reason for that is our music stems from the black community, you know, like from what happens in the blues and what happened in the gospel, what you heard when you were coming up. It's difficult for a white guy that never heard the gospel to come to know how to play. It's like it would be very difficult for me to play hillbilly music. I could do it in a little time, you know, if you give me a little chance to listen to the guys. But I wouldn't be as good as, say, a guy that grew up in that idiom.
That's a very, very important point.
And it's not the color. You see, that they say, you know, a lot of guys say it's white guys don't know how to do it. It's not because of his complexion. It's because of his background. He hasn't had that background. Because you can take you could take a white baby and take him to India and put him with an Indian family. And if he's got any access to being a musician, something like that, and give him a sitar, and you won't know the difference from him and an Indian playing it. This what it is. So that's what it is. You see, some of the guys, you know, they make an issue out of the fact that it's the black guys who quit. Well, it's the black guys because it's their music, and they comes the fundamentals of the music comes out of the black experience. So that's why they play this music better, and they create.
Do you feel that music that has historically evolved from the black experience has gained respect in this country?
It's gained quite a bit of respect, but not all the way yet. I'm doing something now. You know, I'm having some of my compositions made up for symphony orchestra, for me as soloist, by some of the guys that can write for symphony, like Lalo Schifrin, Quincy Jones, Thad Jones, Benny Golson, Benny Carter, Robert Farnon. You probably never heard of him, but
What do you view as some of your favorite musical compositions?
well, I wrote a piece and dedicated to a Baha'i. I belong to the Baha'i faith. And his name is to this guy named Enoch Olenga from Uganda. He's what you call, he's very special in the Baha'i faith because he was appointed a hand of the cause of God by the Guardian, who's dead now. But he's the only African hand of the cause. And he came to New York and I met him. And this year recently in Uganda, someone broke into his house and killed him, killed his wife, and 3 of his children. And so this number that I wrote for him called Olenga is a strong, feeling for this. And that's one of the compositions that one of my favorite because it was really from way back. And then I made this address or joint session of the legislature, the Senate and the House of South Carolina. And I chose the first subject. This subject was 200 years of imperishable hope, and it was an article that was in the Baha'i Journal that we get, and I read the whole thing. It was beautiful, and it taught me, it stated all the facts, about what happened and how we are still hoping for 200 years of imperishable hope. And then in Italy, and then Israel, I played at a place called Caesarea. It was an open amphitheater. And the Dead Sea was behind us, and that was beautiful. And I also played for the members of the Universal House of Justice. Those are the highest governing bodies of the Baha'is. And then I played at the White House. Well, several times I played at the White House, but the last time I played at the White House, it was a big party on the White House lawn with Jimmy Carter. And so everything was all over with. I thought everything was all over with, and I was standing up in the back and they were talking to Benny Carter and Mary Lou Williams and Max Roach and somebody like that. And I felt this hand in my hand, like this, like people do this. Oh, yeah, like this. I was standing there, and I felt this hand. And I was talking to the guy, and I felt this hand in mine. And I looked right away, and I saw the expression on the faces of the guys, the people I was talking to. They were looking like this, see? And I turned around and looked, and I almost fainted. That was the president holding my hand, see? And then I quickly recovered, and I said, I'd like you to meet your cousin, Benny Carter. This is Jimmy Carter. And he said, oh, he made some kind of, he always got he's very quick with something funny, He said there's a possibility or something like that, like that. Benny Carter and Jimmy Carter. And then at the end, I told Max Roach that we were gonna, I said, Max, after everything is over with, you and I are gonna go up there and do a duo. So we go up there and you get your sock cymbal and you and I will do something. He said, okay. I said, be ready now. So then I introduced, President Carter was around there. I introduced him to Max Roach. So Max, I want you to meet Jimmy Carter. And it was nice. Jimmy Carter was nice, boy. He's a very warm human being. He It sounds like politics, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm.
But this is the way he struck me. I saw him walk up to Mingus. Charlie Mingus was in a wheelchair. And he walked up to Mingus and hugged him. And Mingus was just crying, you know. The president hugging Mingus. But he came over to do that. And then, another funny thing happened. I had a book, a present for him, called The Baha'i Administration. You see, this is a book that the administrative setup of the Baha'i faith. It's beautiful, you know, about how they're going to compose a world government and truly a world commonwealth. And so I had this book, and I was looking for the president, and I started over to the president, and Willis Conover said, where you going? I said, I'm going over here. I got something for the president. He said, did you get permission? I said, man, I met the dude before. Because I'd been at the White House. He was there. Well, yeah, and with the Shah Iran, Sarah and I did a concert at the White House. So I'd met him before. So I said, well, I know him. You know what I mean? I walk over and give him a book. So I just kept going. So I went over and gave him the book. I said, here's a present for you. But he didn't recognize me right away. Mm-hmm. See? So he said, thank you very much. And I went on back around. But when I went on the stage, he said, that's him, you know? And then he recognized who I was. And he was all the time we was on the stage, every time I looked over that way, he would be looking at me and he'd be doing, and it was beautiful. And then at the end, when everything was all over with, after Max and I went on and did that little thing that we did together, and then I heard this voice from out there. He asked me first, he said, you going to play some more? I said, look like it's all over with. He said, go on up there, go on. I said, okay, you know, he said, go on up there, go on up there. So Max, it looked like everything was over with. So we played this little thing, this short thing with Max and I. And then we finished that and we took a bow and everything. And then he said, Salt Peanuts, this is Salt Peanut. He said, play Salt Peanut. I said, oh my goodness, we're going to play with that. And then I thought of an idea. I said, wait a minute. I said, okay. I went on the microphone. I said, ladies and gentlemen, the president has requested Salt Peanuts. But I have a diplomatic request. I'll play it if he will sing it. And he said, I don't know it, you know. But we were talking, we would say, come on up, we'll show you. Max will show you when he says Salt Peanuts, Salt Peanuts. All you have to do is say Salt Peanuts, Salt Peanuts. So he said, yeah. And he jumped up on the stage. And then we told him, we played, we rehearsed it a bit. Boom, Salt Peanuts, Salt Peanuts. I said, remember for the boom. Boom, Salt Peanuts, Salt Peanuts, you know. So he did it, so we did it, and it got all over television and everything. Everybody thought that was planned. That wasn't planned. It was just...
I understand that in 1963 there was an attempt to put your name on the ballot as a candidate for president.
But I found out that I'm a Baha'i and I can't run for public office.
Okay.
I made a speech. But I was running. I had bumper stickers. I had balloons. I had a little button. Dizzy Gillespie for president. I had one of those buttons someplace. Oh, it's a button that says Dizzy Gillespie for president, but on the top says the Great American Music Hall endorses Dizzy Gillespie for president. This button says. A guy from San Francisco, one of the guys from San Francisco, a photographer, took this button and walked up to the president and said, would you hold this button, please? The president looked at the button and smiled. And the guy took the picture of Button. I have a picture of Button with Gillespie for president, with the president. Hold on, the president. And then about 5 minutes later, 2 Secret Service men walked up to the guy and says, the president would like to have that button. Okay. He gave it to him. But I have one of those buttons.
You're noted for a horn with a peculiar shape, your trumpet. Why, or a different shape, I guess I should say.
Acoustical. For acoustic reasons, that is. You can hear quicker at this angle than this angle.
Okay. If you were to leave a legacy, what would you want it to be?
A humanitarian. That's a hell of a legacy to leave. That he cared about humanity, which would be good. They can forget about the music. Of course, most anybody can be a musician, but it takes a great degree of the purity of the heart to be a humanitarian.